Today I'm showing you an ARPG called Dwarven Realms. This is an indie passion project by two brothers. This game is in early development, but I've had a lot of fun with it for what it is. Now what I want to do is take you through and give you some tips on what I wish I knew when I started the game. Now first, for the most important thing, you're going to want to put a skin on. No, but seriously, they have a male model for the default body, so if you put on one of the skins, you're going to have a better female skin. So my first real tip is that you're going to want to put your points into strength initially. Strength increases your damage and your armor. Anytime I've tried putting my starting points into anything else, I feel kind of weak early on. But later, once you've decided on what your build is, you can start pumping points into whatever you're trying to specialize in. And for your starting skill points, it doesn't matter too much, but I highly recommend you start moving towards War Strike on the right. Because we have such a low starting base damage, this is extremely effective, especially early on. Don't worry if you make any mistakes, you can always respec later. When you first get into your home, it's pretty empty. And there's a merchant here, but you can kind of ignore the merchant. But check your stash. For some reason, there's always random items that you start with. I didn't get any equipment, but I've seen equipment there at least 2 times that I've started a character. And then for your first taste of combat, you're going to open up a rapture and you're going to head on in. Keep your eyes open when you're doing a rapture because there's a lot of hidden loot. For example, here's a barrel. I opened that and I got some coins, some bones, and some other stuff. So enemies are going to start spawning, but I usually ignore the enemies early on and I focus on getting the ore and other hidden loot that's around, and I save the enemies until they've started to ball up a little bit. Now as you can see here, there's a crate, but this crate requires 2 essence. So you're gonna have to kill enemies in order to get the essence that you need. Now that we've got our enemies all piled up nicely, I'm gonna start hitting them with my ability. And as you can see, I actually got a skill now, so I can press Q, and now I'm doing a different attack. And as you heard the guy just say, we can go to the rupture exit now, and we can fight the boss. But I'm gonna stay here a little bit longer because I have these crates that I want to open with my essence. Once you feel like you've gotten your fill of the loot, you can come over and open the exit. And I usually kill the big wave of mobs that are following me before going through. Now here you get your first important choice in the game. I highly recommend that you pick one element and stick to it. The choice I got for all 3 of my starting ones are all good for melee, so I choose whichever one I want. But I'm going to choose fire because not only does the shield damage enemies and protect me, but at some point we get a dragon, and the dragon has a bonus to fire damage. I don't know if there's a way to get a lightning one or an arcane one, but all I've seen so far is fire, and I've had characters up to level 125. For the first boss, he's going to hit you pretty good if you stand in that AoE, but other than that, he should be relatively easy. Make sure once you've killed the boss, you grab the loot, and that loot's going to give you a key that allows you to open up a recipe. Every boss room has a decent amount of loot, so make sure you go around and collect everything in the room. Now, crafting is actually pretty useful in this game. So the first thing you're going to want to do is smelt all of your ingots. And then once you have the ingots, we're going to be using them in our workbench. You can press tab to open up and see your inventory. So we can see that we've only got boots equipped. So right now we're going to craft some gloves. The first gloves you craft are going to be equipped automatically to you. And we got a blue item, which is better than the white items. But I'm going to see if I can craft a better one. So we ended up getting a rare. Now when you get an improvement on an item, it'll show a green arrow, but this game's not very good with that. It only compares the combat rating of the 2 items. So I think the most important determining factors on whether or not you're going to use a new item is whether or not it's a higher rarity and the item level. This one's item level 1, just like the gloves I'm wearing, but it's a higher rarity, so it's pretty safe to assume that it's going to be a better item. Another important factor that I use to compare items later is whether or not they have my damage type on them, aka fire, lightning, or arcane. You can also see if they have specific bonuses related to your weapon, like one-hander or bow. A lot of unsuspecting things in areas can have materials, so make sure you're doing things like breaking trees and looting random items that you see. Now, if you've gotten to this point and you don't have a weapon that you like, this is a great way to choose the one you want to start with. If you're going for a melee combat, I like the one-hander, but I highly recommend that you go with the bow. Fair warning, the bow is going to feel really bad until you get the R ability, but that shouldn't take too long. Alright, so we've gotten our Q ability and we can start actually doing a little bit of damage, but we're still not going to be doing anything great until we get that R ability. Now I had to stay here till level 5 to get my R ability, but now that I've got my R ability, you'll be able to see that it does a ton of damage and kills everything in the area really easily. One more little tip, make sure you're looking out for these little green circles on the ground, because the green circles are going to give you both energy and health. So you can pretty much just run between them, grabbing them and continuing to cast your ability. Especially later, once you get some energy regen, you're going to be able to do this constantly. Now for this weapon specifically, there's a charge bar. Once you fill up that blue bar at the bottom of the screen, that's when you're going to want to go fight the boss, because you're going to get a 400% damage increase. Just watch how fast this boss dies. Much easier than if I hadn't waited for my skill and also hadn't waited for the charge. Now here's the dragon altar I was talking about. So if you go here, it changes your energized drake into a fire energized drake, and you can choose to complete this. Now I tried skipping this in order to see if I would be offered a different element at some point, but the character where I did choose this, I took over a level 100, and I never saw a way to change my dragon. And then on the other character where I chose not to take this, I got all the way up to like level 90, and I never saw a way to change it. So even if I don't use fire, I'm probably going to take this either way, but I'm not sure exactly what you're supposed to do if you use a different element. Now at this point, you're going to have a bunch of items in your inventory, and you might be wondering what you should do with them. Don't go over to the merchant and sell them. Keep the items on you, because what you're going to be able to do is go over and disenchant them once you get the bench for it. Also, as far as I know, there's no downside to crafting, so you can craft as many copies of stuff as you have the materials for. That'll give you a chance to get improvements, but also what that's going to allow you to do is get your crafting skill up. If you press J by default and then go to the crafting tab, you can see that there's a whole bunch of different abilities here, and you can actually get stuff like critical strike chance from this. Now for our weapon abilities, as you can see here, we've got our Q skill here and our R skill here, and these open in order, and it just continues going through until you get to the very end. As far as I know, there aren't any other active skills besides the two that you have here, but there's on-hit effects, and your offhand items are going to have 3 different abilities, and those are on-hit effects that cause elemental damages. Now this is very interesting. On my second choice of reward, I actually got offered a purple item instead of a normal item. So I personally think that I'm going to pivot and go for arcane damage instead of fire damage. It's easy to change your damage prioritization early on, but once you have a lot of items that you've kept in order to gear towards that type of damage, it's going to be much harder to change it. Now you can see that I'm summoning arcane totems on hit, and there's actually quite a lot of them, and they're doing a lot of damage. Now you're going to notice that there's elite mobs that start spawning. Every time you kill an elite mob, there's a chance that you're going to get something like this that spawns, which allows you to spend your essence that you get from killing enemies in order to get a material. You can also get equipment items and other things. Easy bosses. Now after each run, you're going to notice this little table here. You're going to want to click on it and deposit all of your extra essence into it, because this is going to turn into extra experience when you get back to your home. So once you have 0 essence left, you can go through the teleporter. And we don't have the bench yet, but it'll appear right here once we do. Another little tip, you can destroy almost everything. So I typically try and go around and break everything, so it's easier for me to see not only the enemies, but also the loot. Now that we've unlocked the Scholar's Desk, we can go over here and research. And this is going to give us back some experience for all of the essence that we didn't use in our dungeons. Also, if your inventory is all kinds of disorganized, there's a little button up here that you can click, and that's going to automatically sort your inventory. And it actually does a pretty good job. Now, if you ever notice these books on the ground, you're going to want to walk over them, because it's going to give you those scrolls of knowledge that you need to get more experience. Now, at this point in the skill tree, you can see that I've gotten War Strike, and now I've gotten Infinite Wind. Infinite Wind actually is amazing for increasing your energy regen. Now, when I first read this, it says increases energy regeneration by 15% for 5 seconds. But I don't think it actually does that. I feel like it must be 15% energy regeneration every second for 5 seconds. Because when my energy bar turns green, which you'll see happen relatively often, my energy regen goes through the roof. Here's an example of it happening right now. So because I don't normally have hardly any energy regeneration, and this helps me keep my energy almost perfectly full, then I'm thinking it must not be accurate, because this is much more than 15% increase on my current energy regeneration. Now this is kind of a weird tip, but I think each time you go into a new rupture, it's probably a good idea to let the enemies hit you just once. So I was able to see there that I got hit by 23 damage. The reason why that's important, because there can come to a point where you've been staggering enemies for so long that you don't even realize how much damage they're actually doing to you. That's what happened to me on my level 86 character in hardcore that died. I was killing enemies just fine, but then as soon as I was hit by one enemy, I died instantly. So at that point, you'll have to adjust your survivability and focus less on the damage. Or be super careful. It's not a big deal in softcore, but in hardcore, it's definitely a big deal. Now later, your home is going to expand even more, and you're going to have more crafting stations. You're going to have the ability to transmute items. You're going to be able to craft items that can be put into a dwarven artifact in order to increase your damage and survivability and stuff even more. You're going to have the disenchant table, and you're also going to have a way to craft keys and go into special dungeons. But the final tip I'm going to leave you with, and the most important one, is the infused rupture crystals. When you go here, you're going to be given an option in order to get a massive amount of stats. Now, what is so important about this is not only can you get a lot of stats, but if you get 3 out of 3 of the cards of the same type, you're going to double the bonus that you got from those cards. So make sure you figure out the direction you're trying to go and focus on getting those cards every single time if you can. And if you don't see a card you like, you can always hit reroll. And later you're going to get more rerolls, and you can respec these cards at the respec station. So once you have more rerolls and the option to respec, it's probably worth it to respec your cards and try and focus on getting 3 of the same ones. But for me, I'm using arcane damage, and this one gives plus 25 flat damage and 75% arcane. So I think this is definitely the right choice for me, but it's going to depend on your build. And one quick note, I think that the best path to take for the tree is to focus on getting all of the big nodes leading all the way up here. You're going to grab this node. You're going to skip this one. This is just inventory slots. It's not really worth it. You're going to move up here. You're going to get this node. You're going to grab this one. Then if you're lightning, you're probably going to stop down in here and stop down here and stop down here. If you're fire, you'll probably come up this way and hit here and then drop down in here. And for arcane, you'll probably stop up here and then you'll start again down here and you'll work your way over to the vitality, this tolerance, phantom strike, arcane, beast mode, trance, and then arcane fury and the elementalist. Going up through the middle here is also an option if you want the arcane damage early, but later on I'd probably respec, because I don't think slice and dice is very good unless you're in a very agility focused build. And defiance is decent, but you're going to have to stack some armor for it to really be useful. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you haven't tried Dwarven Realms, I highly recommend at least giving it a try. On the cost versus enjoyment scale, this game is really high. It definitely gives me some of the same enjoyment that I got from things like Dynasty Warriors back in the day. And I can't even remember Gauntlet Legends at this point, but for some reason in my mind, it reminds me of that. But between the attribute points, the crafting, the massive passive skill tree, the different item types and their abilities, there's actually quite a lot here. And there's even a leaderboard if you want to compete. Here's my hardcore character at 188. And I died in the Chamber of Elysia, so be careful. But on that note, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.